Joe Budden adds Marc Lamont Hill to the podcast. Will the co-host be leaving soon?
Marc Lamont will be starting sometime soon. The thinking there is to give each of you a day off, like per month.
That's right, y'all. On the last episode of the Joe Budden podcast, Joe Budden announced that he would be adding Marc Lamont Hill to the podcast as a co-host. And the reasoning seemed a little bit off. It's making me wonder if there is a co-host leaving soon, whether it be Ish or Flip. Those are the most likely candidates, if you ask me. And the reasoning was that he was trying to make sure that he gives his co-host a ability to take at least one full day off a month. I assume that means a whole podcasting day as they record, I think from like 10:30 to 8 or something. Like they be going all day when it comes to podcasting. So what does this mean? I think what was the most interesting thing is that he seemed to announce it on air, and Ish looked a little bit uncomfortable. Ice looked a little bit uncomfortable. And this comes on the heels of many thinking that Joe Budden and Ish are in mid-contract negotiation. So a lot of people feel like the timing of this is very, very timely, and that Marc Lamont Hill comes to the podcast and it's going to shake things up. Now, also, Marc Lamont Hill is a bit of a challenge for Ish the most because he is the person that throws facts out there sometimes that can be wrong. He is the most passionate when it comes on all topics. So Marc Lamont Hill's addition to the pod, to me, runs as a clash to Ish's presence. And another key interesting thing happened here as well. When they announced Marc Lamont Hill's addition to the pod, Melissa Ford was not there. So while Melissa Ford wasn't there, the rest of the co-hosts react awkwardly. But Melissa Ford goes on her Twitter timeline and says, "I'm so happy to have Marc Lamont Hill join us." And I can all but guarantee that if Ish, Marc Lamont Hill, and Melissa Ford are on the same podcast, on same episodes, that he will be taking Melissa Ford's side and helping her hear her voice more and not let it get drowned in as much. So this is a crucial ad, one that I think will have large reaching ramifications for the show. Now, I want to say that I made this prediction a while back. It wasn't really a prediction. It was obvious. Marc Lamont Hill was joining spaces more and more. He was partaking in the conversations. And even when he was on the pod, Joe Budden said that him and Marc Lamont Hill have business coming. And usually when Joe has business coming, he's just going to add them to the pod because I don't think he wants to develop another show. And if you look at his success with developing other shows, it hasn't been the greatest. His most successful show on the network, outside of Improper Improv, which itself is a quagmire, is See the Thing Is, and that ended in a lawsuit. Then once again, Improper Improv hasn't been back for a minute. They keep saying it's going to come back. I don't think it's going to come back anytime soon. So if you look at Marc Lamont Hill's numbers on his YouTube channel, they're a bit of a struggle, and I think it's more of a Joe Budden is doing Marc Lamont Hill a solid. And I even wonder about the pay structure of Marc Lamont Hill. I could see Marc Lamont Hill pulling a Melissa Ford and not even asking for that much pay just so he could be on the podcast. Marc Lamont Hill, smart dude, obviously. He knows the value of being on that podcast. He used to be on CNN, and now he's no longer on CNN. He's on the GBP, so some might see that as a step back. But for what he's trying to do, it could be a great ad. Also, Marc Lamont Hill is joining during the election news cycle. So could it be that Joe realized that, man, this is a really bad thing? We're up here talking about politics, and we don't know what we're talking about. Now, a lot of people also don't like Marc Lamont Hill. They feel he's a pander. They feel that he is a shill for the left-wing liberal movement. That's up for y'all to decide. All I know is he's on the pod permanently for the time being. And I don't know if Ish, I don't know if Ice likes that. And to be honest, this is the same type of move Joe made a couple years ago when Ish and Ice were hitting the ceiling. He added Melissa Ford and Flip. So this is probably par for the course, but I would assume at some point one of these co-hosts are going to leave. How can you have like 10 mics on air? How can you have 10 mics? That's wild. Another thing Joe Budden says was that he was trying to have time for Parks to take off, which is the first time I've ever heard Joe say that he wants Parks to have some free time. And I think he was just playing lip service for the rest of the cast because he didn't want them to feel as replaceable. Because everybody knows Parks is like the least replaceable due to how he sets up the pod and how he is the one that runs the audio and he's the reason that it sounds good. I also think he organizes the editing on the back end. So there's all that, and I feel like that was just lip service for the rest of the members. But let me know what you think. Do you welcome this choice? Do you feel like it will make the podcast better? What other changes are coming? That remains to be seen. And before I wrap up this video, I wanted to follow up on a previous video I made about Joe maybe being mad at Ish, taking a picture with Mandy. So recently there was a video that came out with Joe going to some type of shindig, some type of Duce Palooza event. I don't know if it was an event by Duce Palooza. But anyway, in the video, he goes to some type of party and he is with Ish and he sees Mandy and they seemingly shake hands or say hi to each other. A lot of people are like, Danny, you see this is COE. They all cool. Bro, why do y'all think that represents that they're cool? They're in public. They're gonna not, what do you expect? Joe be like, F you, I'm out of here. And I heard on Spaces, Rocky said that this was a reality show that Joe Budden's doing. So that might not even be a real interaction. That could be staged for the cameras. And if you look at the interaction, there was no type of engagement that made me think like, oh, these two are cool. Mandy's just doing the, oh, she's doing that. And Joe was just like, ah, that doesn't mean they cool. And I do think Joe does look at the relationship that Mandy has with Imani, Ish, Ice, and look at it weirdly. I'm sorry. I don't care what y'all say. Y'all got to look past the COE. All you got to do is look at what happened. Look at the business deal Mandy had with Joe that went awry. Mandy was beefing with Joe because he wouldn't let her place ads on her podcast because it was on his YouTube channel. Then she feels like Joe did her dirty when they separated See the Thing Is from the network because he wanted perpetuity in a podcast that he created. And then Mandy goes on the Need to Know and is saying that Joe Budden doesn't have a network. A lot of drama that is more than the COE. You got to be able to look at things. You got to be able to fine tune and see what's happening in front of the cameras. And does it align with what's actually happening in real life? See, the thing is, isn't on the network. Joe Budden went on his podcast and said he can never be friends with Mandy again. He said that on a Patreon. Can't post Patreon from the JBP because they only allow certain people to do that, like the JBTV community. All right, y'all. Follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. Let me know what you think about Marc Lamont Hill joining the podcast. Let me know what you think about Ice and Ish's reaction to it. Melissa Ford, her reaction to it. And also, let me know what you think about this footage of Mandy and Joe Budden being besties again that a lot of people are falling for because they can't think for themselves. All right, follow me on Instagram, The Stop TV. Follow me on Twitter, The Stop TV. This is Danny from The Stop. Peace.